Hello, I'm Lawrence Juber, and that was a piece called Maisie, which comes from my second album, Naked Guitar. That was the first piece that I wrote for solo fingerstyle guitar, and it dates back to the late 70s when I was a member of Paul McCartney's Wings. It's going to be my pleasure over the next hour or so to give you some tips and pointers to some of my instrumental compositions and arrangements, and I think let's get going. We're going to begin by checking our tuning. So I'm going to run through my bottom E to my top E. I'm in standard tuning. Here's the E string, the A, the D, the G, the B, and the top E. Now I'm going to play a piece called Solo Flight. I'll play it first and then we'll talk about it later. This piece, Solo Flight, is built around a series of very simple left-hand chords. I'll play the opening phrase, and you can see how I'm basically using G, C, and D-shaped chords and weaving the melody in and out of the finger-picking texture. And you can hear how the melody just pops out from inside the structure of the chords there. That's a tricky bit. You've got the D shape. This is 1001 Ways to Have Fun with a D chord. And you can see that the basic chord shape is still the regular C, G, C, and D chords. Let's move. I'll go through that section, the repeat of the first section one more time. Now moving into the second section, very simple, G to a C major 7, play that again. And you can see there, what I'm doing is suspending the chords. It's not really a suspension, it's just the melody kind of is, as I mentioned earlier, weaving in and out of the chords there. Also, observe with my right hand that I'm using a rest stroke. So rather than doing a free picked stroke, just to bring a little more emphasis to the melody, I'm doing a rest stroke with my third finger. And then moving on to the next phrase. Now chordally, what we have here is a change into a B minor 7th flat 5 chord to an E7 flat 9th chord. I'll play that again. We'll stop there and I'll just go over that again. The B minor 7 flat 5 to the E7 flat 9 is a setup, harmonic setup for the A minor that happens here. And I'm still keeping the melody moving there. Do a little flourish on the D. And then we're going to move on to the next section. Now there I'm moving up in tenths. Whoops, excuse me. Keeping the G string open as a kind of a drone through that sequence. It's almost like the Paul McCartney Blackbird kind of fingering there. And then we're going to move up. Oh, one thing I should mention there is that you might see me anchoring my third finger on the first string. Essentially, that serves two functions. It's not really essential to do that, but I find that by resting my finger there, it also mutes the string, so the E note wouldn't necessarily be resonating on its own with the rest of the chords, because there I'm just really working on the inside 4 strings. Then moving on from there, that's a C. That's basically also a D to a B7 chord, and there I'm doing a little strum with my thumb. I'm going to an E minor 7th chord there. This is where it gets a little trickier because you're higher up on the fingerboard. I'll just do that again. And then I'm moving to an A minor chord. Now that's a little bit tricky because you have to hold down the bar chord, and then my melody is moving. Now I perhaps could have done it, but that would involve a little too much jumping around. And then it resolves back to the G. And there, that little figure is really around a G shape. So if you could imagine moving a C chord up and holding it with the first finger at the 7th fret. And then the sequence will repeat itself. Now it changes a little. One thing you'll notice with my right hand at the end, I'm doing rest strokes all the way up. That's basically a dynamic choice. At the end of the song, I want to keep it strong and make the melody sing out by being up high. It's probably a good place right now to mention just the basic technique of the hammers and the pulls that I do. At the point of these kind of riffs, just hammering down. Very often I'll do that kind of thing as an ornament. It's not always intrinsic to the piece, but it helps the texture flow, gives it a slightly kind of Baroque quality too. Let me go over that last section for you one more time. It's a little tricky. Play that bit again. And one more time, up to speed. That was a piece called A Bit of a George. And it really serves to demonstrate the way that you can have a melody and a counterpoint to that melody moving in different directions if you're prepared to do a little bit of jumping around on the fingerboard. I'll go over the first phrase, and we can deal with the biggest technical challenge at the beginning of the piece. Now basically what's happening here is the bass line is moving downwards. So I'm getting from the D, there's a little passing A there, but I'm getting from the D to the C sharp. Now you'll notice that if you play that by itself, that sounds quite dissonant. But in context, it's moving in the opposite direction. I think it's the opposite direction to the melody. Actually, no, it's moving in parallel with the melody, but you get the ear hears a little different melody going on there, so that each part exists in its own harmonic space. And then we go from the G here. I'm jumping up. Then my F sharp in the bass is coming on this F sharp minor chord. Then we've got this nice voicing of an E minor ninth. Play that again. Let me play the whole phrase for you. Now moving on to the second phrase, it gets a little tricky here. We're moving from the key of D to a B flat major seventh chord. And to accomplish this I need to use my thumb, because I'm getting the full B flat major seventh, but I want the bass note in there too. Moves to an A minor seventh, what is essentially a G minor ninth. I put in a little decoration there, but it's really an A minor seventh chord. Let me play that one more time and I'll move on. Now it gets tricky. I'll play that slowly. You just have to make the stretch. Sorry, that's the way the melody goes. And then you move over to this C with kind of an added D. That's probably, for me, that's actually the trickiest part of the piece, is to get that cleanly. And then back to the B flat. Actually, that's a more normal way that I play it, is, and I do a little slide there. And then, you might remember this from Solo Flight, is to make that minor ninth kind of voicing. You just got to be ready to do some stretching with your little finger here. Then we run up there. There's an E minor seventh flat 5. That's the same shape that we had in Solo Flight down here. It's now moved up to an E minor seventh flat 5 position. To an A7. Which brings us back to the D major, which is the main key of the piece. So let me run through that whole section one more time. us back to the main refrain. One thing that I notice as I play that is where I'm doing some rest strokes on the melody. I'm pretty much there. Doing it there too. Watch that. Now moving on to the next section. Let me do that again. That's kind of tough. I'm holding the open A, so you have to make a little half bar to get those sixths moving there. And now the bass line moves down. I'll play that one more time. Here's another one of those little turns, the kind of Baroque style things. And then back to our E minor ninth shape. There we go. And then it changes, same interval, but because it gets a little tight going up there, I've revoiced it to the first and second strings as opposed to the first and third strings. So I'll play that whole section again. I know it's tricky. It's kind of dense, but we'll get through it together. One thing I'd like to point out there also is that when I start, I'm not using rest strokes on the melody. I'm doing free strokes, a little bit of a rest stroke there, just to make it a little more forceful. But I'm trying to get a little dynamic contrast, because when we get here, I want to get up to the high notes and give it a little more power. Those are all free strokes because there's enough power coming out of the combination of the two notes on the sixths. And then we'll head back to the refrain. And now a repeat of the B section, or the B flat section. And then back to the main refrain. This time I'm going to put a little decoration in. Just for variety. Let me show you that bit again. That's kind of a nasty little turn. And then I'm just, instead of going, I'm splitting it up a bit. And then let me end it for you, show you the ending. one more time. There, I changed the bass note a little bit. That's actually a D7 chord. But with the seventh, the C note is in the bass. I'll do that again. And that actually goes to a B minor 7 chord. To an E ninth, A seventh, and a D. I'm bringing that up to speed. That was a piece called In Your Arms. It's kind of a romantic interlude. It's in the key of A minor. And I'll head into it and I'll just point out some things as we go. Before I really get into it, though, I'd like to just mention the fact that with my right hand technique, I don't use fingernails. What I'm using is the flesh of of my fingers. I have a little bit of callus on that part of the right hand finger. I have just enough nail to support the flesh, but I just found that for my style of playing, I have a little bit of classical in my background. I played some lute when I was in college, some Renaissance lute, and I always found that I preferred the sound with flesh to the sound I would get with nails. And what you might find if you try that is that it might feel a little uncomfortable to begin with, but as you get used to it, it feels, I like the feeling of the string against the flesh. It makes me feel like I'm working for a living, you know. It's strange getting up in the morning and my job is to play guitar. It's what I always wanted to do. Anyway, In Your Arms. We'll start with the opening phrase. Just got a rolling figure going on here. The challenge is to keep it smooth, keep it even. Have a change up to an E minor chord here, and B minor. Got to keep those bar chords down. Another one of those little decorations on a D chord. And then repeat. Here comes the tricky bit. This is a harmonic cascade. I'm plucking a harmonic on the 12th fret of the G string, hammering onto the top E onto the 2nd fret, and pulling off. So let me just show you that motion. Then I repeat that, backing up a string at a time. Let me show you that again. So when I do it up to speed, it's a nice effect. That kind of technique was developed quite significantly by a guitar player named Lenny Breau. And if you are interested in developing more of that, I can recommend his music as a source for that. It's a nice moment in the body of the song. So we'll just do that. And then we're coming back to the theme. You'll notice one thing I do with my left hand here is I'm holding a partial bar. And then as I move here, I lift off the bar so that... Now, I guess you could keep it down. Doesn't make a great deal of difference, but I prefer lifting off. You'll notice that I'm holding on to this A minor chord with my 4th finger while the bass is moving. That's something that's pretty characteristic of what I do, is where I'm trying to keep the resonance of the chord going, but have the flexibility to move around in the bass at the same time. There's a little tricky change there. I've got the G chord, but in order to make that move, I'm actually grabbing the G with my thumb to make that change. Then moving into the solo. Basically around the A minor G F sequence. Notice what I do here. I'm ending up with the A on the fourth string here, the C on the third string, and the open B. That way I get that ringing of the B and the C together. I'll show you that one more time. And again, I got the same kind of effect with the C and the B together. Again, I'm doing some of these hammers and pull-offs. This kind of lick. It's actually pretty simple, but it sounds very effective in the texture. I'm hammering down from the first fret to the second fret on the D string, back onto the first fret, pulling off again for the open string. It's a good little exercise to practice. Then moving on with the solo. Here I'm doing a full, where I've got the full bar, and doing a pull off with the E minor 7 to the open, to the first finger. It's not open, but it feels like it's open to me. Same idea as here. And then here again. Sometimes I'll even do that kind of movement. Now here I've got some definite rest strokes with the right hand. So I want to bring out the feeling a little more deeply. Oh, yeah, that's right. Let me repeat that one more time. This is what I do. And then, being ready here, let me do that one more time there. It's another exercise for you. You'll find that I do a lot of that kind of movement, just like I showed earlier on with the... And it just takes practice just to keep the hammers and pulls smooth. Show you that one more time. So let me play that whole solo section one more time for you. back to the melody. And here we have a new lick. This is another one of those licks that's in sixths. The interval of a sixth where I've got the A on the top E, the C on the G string. Moving down. It's another exercise. One thing I'd like to point out here is that I try not to rush the phrase here. Just taking my time. So the melody can sing. And coming up to the ending. Throw that in again. You'll see here it's that variation on the E minor with the added ninth. Just picking across the strings. And there you have it. That was a piece called To New Amsterdam. It's kind of a quasi-Renaissance Irish piece It's in the key of G, and it's quite dense. There's a lot going on with it, so we'll take it a little section at a time. We open up with a descending bass line, and then that also gets repeated a minor third lower. And then we move to an A minor, to a D, E minor, C. It's an interesting, almost a rock and roll kind of slide. We'll play that again because it repeats. There's a movement in there that reminds me of something we talked about earlier, where sometimes you can have a dissonance that when you play it slowly you really hear something that doesn't sound quite right, but in context, when you hear the movement of the music. You really don't hear it as a dissonance there. So that's the first section. Now, moving to the second section, we actually go to a B flat chord with the movement in the bass line. I'll show you that one more time. Now to an E flat over a G. And I'm catching the F in the melody too. So it's quite a full bar there. That same shape gets moved up the 3 positions. And then comes to an A chord, actually an A ninth. And then with a D bass, there's an interesting move. Go from there to the open strings, and that brings us back to the melody there. Let me show you that one more time, that whole bridge section. Back to the melody. Now this is where we go to an extension. So let me back up a little bit and I'll show you what happens there slowly. Show you that one more time. These are pretty much a standard G, F. It's another one of those pull-off type things. That brings that section to a close. Let me show you that one more time from the... And then moving on. Now this section is a good exercise in first inversion major chords. That's That's a G to a C chord, an A over a C sharp to a D chord, a B to an E minor, kind of a decorated E minor, and we go again. Interesting, I hit the harmonic there, and then you have, it's actually an A13th chord, might be unfamiliar to some of you, to a D9th. So this may have a little Irish Renaissance flavor, but it's also got a few jazz chords in there too. And then we repeat the section. You'll notice that as I do this, that I'm not trying to hold the bar down the whole time, but I'm relieving a little bit of the tension. In between, I'm lifting off my fingers. That'll be the second time. So that way, if you're doing this, if you try and keep the tension down, it's going to, all kinds of problems are going to happen. So allow yourself just a millisecond, you don't get much time, but just a little moment to relax. And then moving into the next section, here you have a series of moving tenths. That's the interval of the G in the bass to the B up top. And I've got a D following through in the middle the whole time. Now, I'd like to point out something technically with the right hand, that what I'm doing quite often, and you may notice this, is that I don't always have the thumb just sticking with the lower strings and the other three fingers dealing with the upper strings. There's a certain amount of crossover. At times the thumb will come up and play along with some of the melody notes. Other times my index finger may come back and help the thumb out with some of the lower movement. And you'll see that here. I've got the D string open being played by the index finger, as opposed to if the thumb were alternating. Has a little different kind of character to it. And you'll find that quite often my fingering will evolve because of the musical needs, because I can get a little lighter bounce off of the D string with the index finger. So let's continue with this section. And then it moves up an octave. And this time I've got the G string being the repeated open string, also with the index finger. So let me play this whole section again for you. At the end of this, it then returns to the B flat section. I just noticed there that there are two different melodies going on. The bass movement and then the melody. So there's two different things. So you've got to be able to make sure you can hear both. We go to this E flat chord, F, G, A, and then our descending 6, and back up again, taking a little bit of a pause to come back to the melody. hitting this last G chord. I got no more fingers, so I got to use my right hand to hit the low G. You may notice that on occasion I will sit with both feet down. Other times I'll lift my leg up, give my guitar a little more support. There are certain tunes that I play that I just feel, in order to get my fingers around the neck, it's nice to have the guitar a little bit higher up. And I've never quite got used to having a footstool in the classical fashion. This next tune is one that is a leg up kind of a tune. And it really is an example of taking somebody else's music and arranging it for the guitar. This one was particularly challenging because it was originally a piano piece. And it's Martha, My Dear. I'll perform it, and then afterwards I'll just give you a few tips as to why I made the choices that I did. There you have Martha, My Dear, which is in the not altogether guitaristic key of E flat. I chose E flat for the arrangement for two reasons. One, because it's the original, which made it easier for me to actually just take the original song and translate it immediately to the instrument. The other was because in the bridge section, when it gets up high, I find myself at one point with an A chord going to a D minor chord. And there I had the opportunity to have both the A and the D strings as open strings. Everything else in the body of the piece is essentially revolving around stop strings, which gave me a very strong left-hand exercise, as in the opening phrase. That way I get this nice F to B flat stretch. It's not as bad as it looks. Take it from me. I have little hands, so if you've got long fingers, it really shouldn't be too bad. Anchoring there so that you get you're not just trying to reach back from nothing, but actually keeping the little finger, the fourth finger, anchored. Doesn't have to stay there very long. And then it repeats. And then we come to the melody. Now we come to the bridge section, where it's starting off in D minor. Then we come to an F chord. Now because I'm way up here, I have to use my right hand to fret those notes. And all I'm doing is just hammering onto the fret. Nothing fancy about it. You know, it helps to have a little bit of callus so it doesn't hurt too much. And then we're at 2. And there's my open D and A. Let me show you that again. Basically a C7 sus. Let me take that section again. It's another one of those dissonances. It's a B flat major 7 chord if you were to play the whole chord. Like that. Let me run it back a bit so you can get the whole flow of it. So I'm holding that. You might remember the similar motion to that from In Your Arms, where I'm holding a minor chord with my little finger, moving the bass line, and we're back to E flat. Back to the bridge. This time it only does half of the bridge and goes back to the melody. Well, it's been a pleasure to be with you for the last hour or so. I certainly feel like I've learned a lot. I hope you have too. So I'd like to thank you for being with me. I'd also like to thank Taylor for their wonderful guitars, GHS for their strings, Fishman for their electronics, which we've been using to record direct, and Sabine for their little tuner that keeps me in tune. So we're going to continue just to finish up with a performance of a piece of mine called Bob's Your Uncle. And this is to introduce you to my next video, part 2 of the series, which is to focus on my use of altered tunings. And Bob's Your Uncle was my first ever piece written in the tuning of Dadgad, D-A-D-G-A-D. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you.